Question 951. Andrew's apartment lease with a term of 2 years terminated, but the landlord went ahead and accepted another monthly rent payment from Andrew. The lease is now A. A periodic tenancy, B. A co-tenancy, C. Extended for 2 more years, D. Terminated. Correct answer is A. A periodic tenancy. When a fixed-term lease, like Andrew's 2-year apartment lease, expires, it automatically terminates. If the tenant remains in possession, they become a holdover tenant or tenant at sufferance. However, if the landlord then accepts another rent payment from the holdover tenant, this action typically signifies the landlord's consent for the tenant to remain. This changes the nature of the tenancy from a holdover to a periodic tenancy. Since the payment was a monthly rent payment, the lease is most likely converted into a month-to-month periodic tenancy. Question 952. A tax shelter involving real estate could refer to an A. Tax-deferred exchange, B. Installment sale, C. Depreciate portions of a home used solely for business purpose, D. All of the above. Correct answer is D. All of the above. A 1031 exchange allows investors to defer capital gains taxes by exchanging one investment property for another. In an installment sale, the seller receives payments over time. This can spread out the tax liability, reducing the tax burden in a single year. For income-producing properties, owners can deduct a portion of the property's value as depreciation expense each year, reducing their taxable income. All of these strategies can be used to reduce the tax liability associated with real estate investments. Question 953. Which of the following terms does not fit with the other three? A. Consideration, B. Offer, C. Title, D. Acceptance. Correct answer is C. Title. Consideration, offer, and acceptance are the 3 essential components required to form a valid contract. Consideration, offer, and acceptance are the 3 essential components required to form a valid contract. These 3 elements form the foundation of a legal agreement between parties. An offer is a proposal to enter into a contract. Acceptance is the agreement to that proposal's terms. And consideration represents the exchange of something of value between the parties. Title, on the other hand, refers to the legal right of ownership of property. While title is often involved in real estate contracts, it is a concept of property ownership, not a fundamental element required for the formation of a contract itself. You can have a valid contract, e.g., a contract for services, without any concept of title being involved. Question 954. A person died intestate. If no additional heirs were found and there was no will, the real property belonging to the deceased would transfer by A. Devise, B. Descent and distribution, C. Escheat to the state, D. Demise. Correct answer is C. Escheat to the state. Devise refers to the transfer of real property through a will. This scenario states there was no will. Descent and distribution refers to the transfer of property to legal heirs when someone dies intestate. This applies when heirs do exist. Demise can refer to a transfer of an estate, like in a lease, or simply death. But it's not the legal mechanism for property transfer when there are no heirs. Intestate means dying without a valid will. No additional heirs were found indicates that there are no legal successors who would inherit under the laws of intestacy. To escheat refers to property reverting to the state if it is classified as abandoned. This usually occurs when someone dies intestate and no heirs can be located. Question 955. To be valid, a will must fulfill the following legal requirements. A. Must be in writing, B. Should be signed by the testator, maker of the will. C. Must be attested to by at least 2 competent witnesses, D. All of the above. Correct answer is D. All of the above. To be considered legally valid, a will must generally meet the following requirements. 1. Must be in writing. Oral wills are typically not legally valid. 2. Must be signed by the testator, maker of the will. This demonstrates the testator's intent and understanding of the document. 3. Must be attested to by at least 2 competent witnesses. Witnesses provide evidence that the testator signed the will voluntarily and with sound mind. These requirements help ensure the validity and enforceability of a will. Some jurisdictions recognize holographic wills, which are wills written entirely in the testator's handwriting and signed by them, without the need for witnesses. However, these are subject to strict scrutiny and are not recognized everywhere. Question 956. Under the CalVet program, title to a property purchased by a veteran is held in the name of the A. Department of Veterans Affairs, B. Veteran, C. State Government, D. Federal Housing Administration. Correct answer is A. Department of Veterans Affairs. In the CalVet program, the California Department of Veterans Affairs, CalVet, actually purchases the property on behalf of the veteran. This is a distinctive feature of the CalVet program. Unlike traditional mortgage loans where the veteran obtains a loan from a bank, CalVet directly purchases the property and then enters into a land contract with the veteran, while CalVet holds legal title during the loan repayment period. The veteran has the right to occupy and enjoy the property. Upon full repayment of the loan, the veteran receives full legal title to the property. Question 957. The way in which different persons residing on someone else's property can accumulate the amount of time required to be awarded adverse possession is termed A. Avulsion, B. Tacking, C. Aggregating, D. Squatting. Correct answer is B. Tacking. Avulsion refers to the sudden removal of land by water, e.g., a river suddenly changing its course. It has no relation to adverse possession. Aggregating is a general term meaning to combine or collect, but it is not the specific legal term used in adverse possession. Squatting refers to the act of occupying property without legal right or permission. While adverse possession often begins with squatting, squatting itself is the act, not the legal principle of combining time periods. Tacking is a legal principle related to adverse possession. It allows consecutive adverse possessors to combine their individual periods of occupation. This aggregation of time helps them meet the statutory duration needed to establish a claim of adverse possession over a property. Adverse possession is a legal doctrine allows someone who occupies land for a certain period of time, usually several years, under specific conditions to acquire ownership of that land. If one person possesses the property for part of the required time period, and then another person takes possession and continues the adverse possession, the time periods can be tacked together. Example: if one person possesses the property for 3 years, and then another person possesses it for 4 years, they can tack their possession times together to potentially meet the statutory requirement for adverse possession, often 521 years depending on the jurisdiction. Tacking allows successive adverse possessors to combine their possession times to establish ownership of the property. Question 958. The income capitalization approach looks at return of an investment, referring to A. Returning to the property being appraised by the income capitalization method, B. Recapturing the initial investment, C. Giving up the initial investment, D. None of the above. Correct answer is B. Recapturing the initial investment. Income capitalization approach is a method of property valuation. This method focuses on the income-generating potential of the property. Return, in this context, refers to the expected return on investment. Investors purchase income-producing properties with the expectation of earning a return on their investment. This return comes in the form of rental income, the primary source of income. Potential for property appreciation. The property may increase in value over time. Essentially, the return in the income capitalization approach refers to the investor's goal of recapturing their initial investment and earning a profit from the property's income stream. Question 959. Elaine, George and Owen are siblings who own a home as joint tenants. George sells his share to Jerry. Jerry is now A tenant in common with Elaine and Owen. B. Tenant in the entirety with Elaine and Owen. C. Tenant at will with Elaine and Owen. D. Joint tenant, with the same property interest possessed by George. Correct answer is a tenant in common with Elaine and Owen. Key feature of joint tenancy is the right of survivorship. When one joint tenant dies, their share automatically passes to the surviving joint tenants. When a joint tenant sells their share, the right of survivorship is severed. Jerry, upon purchasing George's share, becomes a tenant in common with Elaine and Owen. With tenancy in common, 1. Each owner has an undivided interest in the entire property. 2. There is no right of survivorship. 3. If a tenant in common dies, their share passes to their heirs, not to the other co-owners. In summary, by selling his share, George broke the joint tenancy. Jerry now holds an undivided interest in the property as a tenant in common with Elaine and Owen. Question 960. A purchaser of a property paid the price agreed upon in the contract and asked the seller to convey title. The buyer has made A. Escrow, B. Tender, C. Warranty, D. Counter offer. Correct answer is B. Tender. Escrow is a neutral third party that holds funds and documents during a real estate transaction. A warranty is a guarantee or promise made by the seller regarding the condition or quality of the property. A counter offer is a response to an initial offer, proposing different terms and conditions. In real estate, a tender refers to the buyer's unconditional offer to perform their obligations under the purchase agreement. This typically involves 1. Paying the agreed-upon purchase price in full. 2. Delivering all necessary funds and documents to the seller or escrow agent. 3. Being ready to complete the transaction according to the terms of the contract. By tendering payment, the buyer is demonstrating their readiness and willingness to complete the transaction and fulfilling their contractual obligations.